the year. No, the wedding of the century. Sarah McDowell intended to create the most exquisite event possible, a wedding worthy of Vogue magazine, or at least a 2-page spread in the Rose, Oregon Gazette. The entire town would talk about her daughter's wedding. The foundation for Sarah's plans rested squarely on booking the Women's Century Club for the reception. It was why she'd maintained her association with the club after that woman had been granted membership. She was outraged that such a fine institution would lower itself to welcome the likes of Mary Sutton. Sarah refused to dwell on the sordid details. She couldn't allow herself to get upset over something that had happened almost 20 years ago, although it didn't hurt any to imagine Mary hearing, second or third hand, of course, about Kristen's wedding. As Sarah understood it, Mary's daughter had eloped, mind you, with some riff-raff hazelnut farmer. Sarah didn't know that for sure because it was her Christian duty not to gossip or think ill of others. However, sometimes information just happened to come one's way. Pulling into the parking lot of the Women's Century Club, Sarah surveyed the grounds. Even this late in the year, the rose garden was breathtaking. Many of the carefully tended bushes still wore their blooms, and next June, when the wedding was scheduled, the garden would be stunning. The antique roses with their intoxicating scents, and the more recent hybrids with their gorgeous shapes and colors would make a fitting backdrop for the beautiful bride and her handsome groom. It would be perfect, she thought with satisfaction. Absolutely perfect. Sarah had stopped attending the Women's Century Club meetings 3 years ago. Well, there wasn't any need to obsess over the membership committee's sorry lapse in judgment. For many years, Sarah had chaired that committee herself. The instant she stepped down, Mary Sutton had applied for membership to the prestigious club and received it. Now the only social event Sarah participated in was the annual Christmas dance. Mary Sutton had robbed her of so much already, but Sarah wasn't letting her ruin that too. Sarah did continue to meet with other friends from the club and managed to keep up with the news. She understood that Mary had become quite active in the association. Fine. Good for her. It gave the woman something to write about in her column for the weekly Rose Gazette. Not that Sarah read about town. Someone had told her it was fairly popular, though, which didn't bother her in the least. Mary was a good writer. Sarah would acknowledge that much. But then, what one lacked in certain areas was often compensated in others, and Mary was definitely lacking in the areas of generosity, fairness, ethics. She could go on. With a click of her keychain, Sarah locked her car and headed toward the large 2-story stone structure. There was a cold wind blowing in from the ocean, and she hurried up the steps of the large veranda that surrounded the house. A blast of warm air greeted her as she walked inside. Immediately in front of her was the curved stairway leading to the ballroom on the 2nd floor. She could already picture Kristen moving elegantly down those stairs, her dress sweeping grandly behind her. Today, evergreen garlands were hung along the mahogany railing, with huge red velvet bows tied at regular intervals. Gigantic potted poinsettias lined both sides of the stairway. The effect was both festive and tasteful. "Oh, how lovely," she said to Melody Darrington, the club's longtime secretary. "Yes, we're very pleased with this year's Christmas decorations." Melody glanced up from her desk behind the half wall that overlooked the entry. The door to the office was open, and Sarah heard the fax machine humming behind her. "Are you here to pick up your tickets for the Christmas dance?" "I am," Sarah confirmed. "And I'd like to book the club for June 7th for a reception." She paused dramatically. "Kristen's getting married." "Sarah, that's just wonderful." "Yes, Jake and I are pleased." This seriously understated her emotions. Kristen was the